Hi everybody, my name is Agathi Prodromou. I am a research student at the University of Leeds, and for the last 5 years I have been looking at Cypriot students' attitudes towards school science, if and how they change, as well as the reasons these change, if they do so, when students move from primary to secondary school. And today I will be talking to you about the impact of this global COVID-19 pandemic on my research. First, I would like to say a few words about my research and what it is about. Looking at the literature, we could see that there is a relationship between students' positive attitudes towards school science and better attainment in science. Research across the world also shows that students' attitudes towards school science become less and less positive as students move through their school years, with the most dramatic decline happening as students move from primary to secondary school. With Cypriot students underperforming in sciences compared to their peers in other European countries, as shown by PISA 2015 and 2018 results. And having in mind the literature which indicates that there is a link between more positive attitudes towards science and better attainment, I thought it would be very interesting and very important to have a look at Cypriot students' attitudes towards science. What are they? If they change, how they change, and why they change when students move from primary to secondary school. So to answer these questions, I had to collect my data. And I chose to follow a mixed methods approach. So I chose to collect both quantitative and qualitative data. To collect my quantitative data, I administered about 470 questionnaires in Cypriot students from primary and secondary schools. And to collect my data, my qualitative data, I interviewed 34 primary and secondary school students in Cyprus. And at this point, when I was almost done with my data collection, it was when the global pandemic hit us, and I had to reconsider my data collection and my data analysis, as I had to change the way I did certain things. So how did this pandemic affect my research? I think, like many researchers and research students around the world who collected qualitative data, one of the main challenges I faced was collecting data during pandemic due to all of these restrictions and social distancing, and this made face-to-face investigations and interviews a little bit more difficult. So at this point, when I was about to start my data collection, in Cyprus there were only a few cases of COVID-19, but watching the news around the world, I could see that lots of countries were already in lockdown. So I had, when I was doing my data collection or planning my data collection, I was thinking that it could be Cyprus' turn to go into lockdown soon. So at that point, I was planning to collect my quantitative data first and then do a preliminary analysis. And based on my results, I was going to identify a group of students for my interviews. But thinking that Cyprus could possibly go into lockdown, and the schools could possibly shut, I had to change this, and I decided to do all my data collection from each school on the same day. So I went in, I gave the students the questionnaire, then I had some discussions with science teachers, and together we identified the students for the interview. So that was the first thing I changed. And the second one, I was initially planning to do some interviews with teachers as well. They would be informal interviews just to inform my interview schedule for the group interviews with students. But at that point, I thought it would be too much if I tried to collect all the data, questionnaires, group interviews with students, interviews with teachers on the same day, and I had to reconsider teacher interviews, and I cancelled them because I thought that I had with questionnaires and group interviews with students, I had enough data to answer my research questions anyway. So again, looking at literature, I could see that many graduate students faced challenges with their training, and that was certainly one aspect that affected my research too, training, because after I collected my data, I decided that for the quantitative data, I wanted to use a statistical package such as SPSS to analyze it, but I have never used this before. And pre-COVID, I was planning a number of meetings and training sessions with some of my links in local universities here in Cyprus. But of course, with lockdown and restrictions and local universities not accepting visitors, that was impossible. So I had to postpone all the training that I have planned. Also, I think for me, another thing that I felt during COVID-19 pandemic was this pandemic multiplier effect. So as researchers, I think we face typical challenges such as getting organized, getting focused, organizing our notes, organizing everything, organizing our training, managing our reading, and all of these things. But I think for me, pandemic made this even harder because my stability was taken away. My stability was not the same as before. I didn't have the same learning space. I had more distractions because I had to work from home. Pre-COVID, because I work as a teacher, so pre-COVID, I would spend some time in school studying for my PhD, and that was good because I could work in a different area where I didn't have as many distractions, because here at home I have my son and there are always distractions, and being stuck here at home took away this stability. Even with my routine, I knew I was going to the school in the morning, I would study in the afternoon, I would study over half terms or holidays for my research. I wasn't able to do this anymore, and this added a little bit on the stress because I wasn't able to plan, and I didn't know when things were happening, when I would find time to study, where I was going to study, and this I think added a little bit of my stress. So things for me that were already complicated before the pandemic sometimes felt impossible during pandemic. And then simple things like taking breaks. For me, moving from my workplace, so from my school home to where I was working for my PhD sometimes, there was a mental shift because I was moving from one place to another, and I had this time to decompress or switch off and take a break. But with COVID-19, because I was trapped in the same space all the time, when I got this time to study for my PhD, it wasn't always possible to switch off, take a break, and rest a little bit. So, as much as facing these challenges, and as much as COVID-19 has disrupted my learning, I do feel that this situation gave me some opportunities to develop certain skills and to move forward. And I will definitely take all of these skills that I use, all of these skills that I developed in the future. So the first one, I talk about how all my training opportunities were cancelled. I think this taught me to be more resilient because I was pushed out of my comfort zone. I had to teach myself how to use SPSS. I had to read manuals. I had to watch YouTube videos. And because I was pushed out of my comfort zone and I was challenged, I think I learned a lot of things, because that's, I think, when you learn better, when you're pushed out of your comfort zone. And with me having to change my plans and adjust and adapt my data collection, I think I was taught to be more flexible and creative and open to changes. I wasn't like that before. I changes stressed me out a bit, but with this COVID-19 pandemic, I think I moved from a fixed mindset to a more growth mindset, and I think that was important for me. Finally, I think I was taught how to be grateful, and for lots of things, including certain aspects of my studies, such as the following. I know that lots of students faced a major disruption in their data collection, and I do recognize that I was lucky because I had mostly finished with my data collection when COVID-19 hit us, and I know it would be way more challenging for me if I hadn't finished with my data collection, and if all of these restrictions were put in place as I was collecting my data. Also, talking to other research students, I know that access to software and IT programs has been a challenge for them, but I feel extremely lucky because University of Leeds gave us access from day one to all the software and programs we needed. I was able to download programs such as SPSS and NVivo from the IT website of the university. Also, I know, talking to other research students, I know that they found it challenging sometimes, that they had to move all their meetings into virtual meetings, and that they were not able, for example, to access the library. But for me, as a part-time distance learning student, that was my normal way of working: virtual meetings, online library access. So I think I do feel lucky that I didn't have to adapt to this change, because that was the way I was working anyway. And finally, I know I said that I spend more time at home, and that sometimes made it harder for me to take a break and decompress. But at the same time, with all of these restrictions and lockdown and everything around shut, this gave me the time I needed to work on my PhD. And that's how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected my research. Thanks for listening.